Hi, I am Lucky Ladybug, and today I want to talk about a possibly controversial topic that is very close to my heart. I want to discuss, has Square Enix made any indication in any of their games or other media that Sephiroth can be redeemed, that the good him is still in there? And some people say yes, some people say no, and I want to tell you why I think that he is redeemable and why Square has made that pretty clear if you're paying attention. Now, not everyone will agree with me. That's fine. I don't care. I just want to say how I feel about it. And lately, I've been seeing a lot of people saying, engaging in this topic. Is he redeemable? Can he be redeemed? Will they do it? And I think Square has been giving us hints for years that the good him is still in there. Now, whether they'll actually follow through and let him be saved, I don't know. Because they've teased us with it before and then let us down, and it's very frustrating, and I'm really hoping that they're not going to do that to us again. But in the meantime, the evidence is there, and it's been there for anybody to see. It's still there. You can just look it up. And I admit most of this evidence is from Dissidia verse, and you know that's reasonable when there isn't really any content put out that takes place after Advent Children and Dirge of Cerberus. We don't really know what's happening to the characters or Sephiroth after that point. Dissidia games are not considered the main timeline, but there's still a timeline put out by the official company. And like it or not, they're telling us some very intriguing things about Sephiroth in those games. So I have my Dissidia Sephiroth figure here, since I'm going to be talking largely about these games. Exhibit A, Dissidia Duodecim. Now, this is the first chronological game, even though it was released as the second one. Now, Sephiroth has been stripped of his memories. He's on a quest to recover them. The gods of this realm that take everybody's memories from them to force them to fight their little wars. And so Sephiroth meets up with Kefka from FF6. He's treated to a display of Kefka's twisted sadism. He's like cackling in glee about the people that die over and over in the battles and then are revived in the next cycle. And he enjoys all the suffering and the misery. And what's Sephiroth's response to this? Repulsive. That's what he says. And would the fully insane Sephiroth have such a reaction, considering the suffering he's brought to so many? Even if he didn't feel as Kefka did, I have a hard time believing he would respond as he did if he was fully the insane version of himself. In this state without his memories, he seems to be in an in-between place. He does things that the sane Sephiroth would never dream of, such as going after Tifa to get Cloud to come out and fight him. He thinks that fighting Cloud will help him get his memories back, because Kefka has told him that if you fight people from your world, then you'll start recovering more of your memories. But so in spite of him doing things like that, there's a sweetness and a gentleness to him that the fully insane Sephiroth would never have. When he wins against a character, he may say one of three things, and two of these things are, "Do not despair," and "You have done well." Now, can anyone picture the insane Sephiroth saying either of these things? They're also said in a sincere, kind tone of voice, not sinister or mocking at all. And I think that's very significant. And Exhibit B is Dissidia, the original one. And in this game, Cecil Harvey from FF4 notes that there is sadness in Sephiroth's eyes. Now, one could argue, I suppose, it's simply sadness from not remembering everything as he really wants to do. But much more likely, he's seen a window to Sephiroth's soul and the sadness he may be feeling at what he has become since Nibelheim. Would Square have really put in such an intriguing part if it didn't mean more than just simply sadness over not remembering? I suppose they could have, but I feel like they would want it to mean more than just that, and they would know the fans would read more into it than that. I feel like they were giving us a real good hint there. And Exhibit C, Dissidia NT. Sephiroth is nastier in NT than in some ways. He certainly doesn't say kind things to his opponents anymore, unfortunately. But on the other hand, he's willing to be a team player and he's kind to his teammates. He's even humble enough to say, I was wrong, if he's injured. Now, I usually picture the KH Sephiroth being the one speaking, as he's not insane as far as we know. But the dialogue's the same for both Sephiroths, since, technically the KH one is just an outfit, and the story mode doesn't acknowledge KH characters being brought to, even though I personally insist on thinking of it that way, because that's more fun. So, what we've got here is the insane Final Fantasy Sephiroth actually acknowledging being wrong. Can anyone picture him doing this in the original game or Advent Children? I certainly can't, honestly. And he also says other things, like he'll congratulate his teammates if they make a good attack. He'll say, well done. He says that when they win, too, I think. So he's very nice to his teammates. And there's also his intriguing role in the cutscenes, where he recognizes a greater threat and the need for everyone to join together to fight it. Yes, antagonists, even insane antagonists, could come up with this if they're smart enough, as Sephiroth is, of course. But it's still showing a side of him that's different from the completely unhinged person he is during parts of the original game. And I always find such team-ups intriguing in stories, and I love that they all part ways at the end to go home, instead of having to be defeated and killed to leave the place. I just hate it when a really cool team-up ends with the bad guys turning on the good guys, and everything's back to status quo. The good guys have to beat them. Oh, I hate that. But so that doesn't happen in NT at all. And we have to talk about Sephiroth's handle in the game. All the characters are nameless something. Sephiroth's handle is Nameless Hero, not Former Hero or Nameless One-Winged Angel or anything about his insane state. It's just Nameless Hero. Maybe it means nothing, or maybe it means everything. He certainly doesn't exhibit hero behavior in some ways in the game, but in others he perhaps does, guiding everyone to team up against the greater problem, being a leader like he once was. Overall, NT has some really interesting and exciting developments, even though it didn't have the proper type of story mode that the two PSP games had. It's just like some disjointed cutscenes, unfortunately. I don't know why they did it that way, especially since they had better graphics in NT. Could have made some really beautiful things with their story mode. But Square really seemed to be building on each game to do intriguing things with Sephiroth. And, that's why what happened next is such a big blow. Exhibit D, Dissidia Opera Omnia. Now, I've mentioned before on Tumblr how this game doesn't really fit with the others due to the plot hole about Sephiroth's memories. The game has him talk about throwing his memories into the live stream, a plot point featured in the book On the Way to a Smile. I despise this concept. I won't acknowledge that idea in my verses except to be cheeky about it. I have him that he tried to throw his cell phone away instead. And, it doesn't even make sense here, because he did that during Meteor, yet the Dissidia games appear to take place after that. Now, even if one argues the memories he loses in Dissidia are the ones he kept after throwing the rest away, it still doesn't make sense. He met Tifa again in Dissidia Duodecim, yet in Opera Omnia he doesn't remember her because of throwing his memories away. So unless we're to believe he threw them away twice, it's a huge plot hole. It also cancels out all of the character development he went through in the prior 3 games and makes his quest to recover his memories completely pointless. Sephiroth was not the true antagonist in any of the prior Dissidias, but in this one he's very much a major antagonist, and a lot of plot threads seem to hinge on stopping him from overthrowing the gods and taking over World B. Sure, he'd probably like to do that if he could, but it still feels wrong after the past 3 games. I feel like Square created this game to reach a broader audience than the other 3 Dissidias, because it's like a mobile game, so people would just be randomly downloading it all over the place, even if they just have like a casual knowledge of Final Fantasy. They knew most people would see Sephiroth as only a villain, so they were leaning into that characterization. Now, everything could be solved if the game was the first in the series instead of Duodecim being chronologically first, but unfortunately, Opera Omnia takes place after NT, as elements of NT are part of the game. Now, all that being said, Square did do something very interesting that must be acknowledged. Angiel wants to save Sephiroth and sets about trying to get through to him. And you know what? It starts working. Sephiroth wavers. He says Angiel's making him unstable. He wants out of their interaction. And the attempt to save him ultimately doesn't work because of status quo, and maybe because Square's planning the real redemption to happen in something bigger than a mobile game. But the important thing to take away from this is that Angiel was getting through. Sephiroth is not lost. The good him is still in there, still remembers Angiel, and still cares about Angiel. Of course, then there's the question, would it be realistic for Sephiroth to be saved after everything he's caused and his insanity and how much he's changed? The good Sephiroth and the bad Sephiroth really do seem like 2 different people. They were so different in personality, even in speech pattern. But, I don't know, man. Is anything particularly realistic about someone going insane, partially from being preyed upon by an evil alien entity whose DNA he bears? There's no real-life cases to compare to what Sephiroth's got going here. It can't just be dismissed as regular insanity, or even him going bad and not insane, because it's not that simple at all. Geneva is a parasite, and she's had her claws in him probably from the beginning, given other evidence hinted at in Ever Crisis that may turn out to be her manipulating Sephiroth even when he was a boy. So how much of the insane Sephiroth is him talking, and how much is Geneva? He believes he's in control of her, but is he really? Considering she spent millennia turning people against each other and conquering worlds in that way, is it really believable that she has been completely suppressed by Sephiroth and now only does his will? I really don't think so. And honestly, with these factors in play, as well as the evidence Square has been feeding us since at least 2008, I would say whether Sephiroth can be redeemed is up to each person to decide. But to me, it's looking pretty good that Square's trying to tell us he can be, even if in the end they leave it up to the fans to actually accomplish that. I'm really hoping that Part 3 of Remake will have an actual Sephiroth redemption, and not just like a cheap way out, like showing an alternate Sephiroth that never cracked up or something. I want to see the real main timeline Sephiroth, or the remake timeline Sephiroth, get redeemed. I want that so bad, and I feel like Square is teasing it so much by showing us how good he was. I mean, they're really laying it on thick with Ever Crisis, and even in some of the new scenes in Remake and Rebirth. So I'm really hoping they're not going to torture us with that and then take it away like they did in Opera Omnia. But even if they do, I'm still never going to believe that he isn't redeemable. Square provided the evidence. And I and others are going to keep portraying him as redeemable because of that. So, did I miss anything? Is there other evidence you can think of that might point to him still being in there and possibly being able to be saved somehow? I would love to hear it. So, talk about it in the comments if you have anything else. I want to know everything. So, this is Lucky Ladybug, and thanks for watching.